Hey guys, so in the last lecture we have seen how to find the frictional power. So for that we have seen two methods to find the frictional power. First is Williams-Lines method and another is Mohs test. So in the Williams-Lines method we have just uh, drawn a graph of fuel flow rate versus engine torque, and we extrapolated that graph up, on the left hand side of the zero, and where it meets the x-axis. So that was our so this was our friction torque. This was the graph if we extrapolate towards the x-axis. So at what it meets the x-axis, so we get the frictional torque. So this is one of the method, and another method to find the frictional power was that is Mohs test. So in Mohs test what we have done, that if there is a multi-cylinder engine, then we used to switch off one of the cylinder and measure the power of the another three cylinder. Then similarly we'll switch off the second cylinder and we'll measure the power of the other three cylinder, and similarly we'll switch off third and similarly fourth. And similarly we have just use this equations, the total power minus the power of the three cylinders brake power. So we'll get the indicated power of the first cylinder. So similarly we have found the frictional power, that is I minus B. So we will see few uh, other methods today. So which methods we will see? So the third method was motoring test. That is motoring test. So what is motoring test? So in this method we will determine, our goal is also to determine the frictional power. So the engine is run up to its rated power till steady state condition is reached. So what do we mean by steady state condition? Means steady state means at uh, at constant, the values doesn't change with respect to time. That is steady state. So the power developed by the engine is absorbed by a swinging field dynamometer connected to the engine. So the power developed by the engine is absorbed by the dynamometer, so connected to the engine shaft. So either the ignition of the petrol engine or the fuel supply of the diesel engine, as the case may be, is then cut off. So then what happens, that we are cutting off the ignition or the fuel supply if it is petrol engine or if it is diesel engine. So by suitable changes in electrical switching devices, dynamometer is run as a motor at the same speed at which engine was run. So this is run at a motor at the same speed at which the engine was run. The output of the motor is measured. So this output is measured is measured this output of the motor is measured, which would represent the frictional losses of the engine. So in order to maintain the operating temperatures of the engine, the cooling water system is also cut off during the motoring test. So if you want to measure the temperature, so cooling is also cut off. So we can measure the temperature. So what errors are involved in this measurement of the test? However, the motoring this test does not give the true friction losses at the test speed and the load. So what is the reasons, uh, errors that can involve in this test? So we'll see errors that are possible in this test. So first is that temperature during the motoring test are lower than those in a firing engine due to cooling by the incoming air. So that is, air cooling is happening. and heat transfer to the surroundings. So as you know that it is this engine when it is tested, so it is tested differently. I mean, it is open in the atmosphere, while if it is in it's fitted inside a automobile, so the air cooling might be different. So this is one of the uh, reason for the temperature not showing correctly. Second is reduced temperatures. So reduced temperature reduces the lubricating oil temperatures and increases oil viscosity. So if the temperature are reduced, so it can reduce the oil viscosity. Viscosity of oil is reduced. So the what will happen? So increase oil viscosity, therefore it increases the friction power. So the lubricating oil temperatures and increases the oil viscosity, so it increases the friction power. So due to this the friction power is increased. Then third, the pressure and the load. So the pressure and the load on the bearings and piston rings are lower than the firing engine. It reduces the frictional power. So these are less, so it will reduce the friction power. Then fourth is the clearance between the piston and cylinder. The clearance between the piston and cylinder. So this is the cylinder and suppose this is the piston. So this clearance. So this clearance is more due to reduced temperature in the cylinder. So if the temperature is more, so this will expand. As we know that, uh, and this cylinder may also expand. So at high temperature, it expand due to thermal expansion, coefficient of thermal expansion. So if the temperature is low, so this clearance will increase because it will contract or it will not expand, in short. So it also reduces the friction power. Then fifth is the friction power is also affected due to the air being drawn at a temperature lower than the firing engine, since it is not heated from the cylinder walls. then the fifth then the fifth reason due to which the friction loss may not be accurate, that is that the air which is being drawn to cool down the engines, it is not that air is not heated, because in real testing, I means real life application, so this air will be heated due to the cylinder walls while coming inside. Uh, so this air would be heated. Then sixth point is that back pressure is more than the firing engine, since after expansion the required pressure difference is not available to impart kinetic energy to expel the exhaust gases. However, so there's back pressure. So, however, the motoring test gives fairly good results, since the increased and reduced friction loss almost balance each other. That is, the increase plus decrease balance each other, and total net is nearly equal to zero. So this method is very useful for finding friction losses caused by various components by progressively stripping off the engine components for research purpose. Next method is fourth, that is measurement of indicated power and brake power. So this is an ideal method by which the friction power is obtained by computing the difference between the indicated power minus brake power from the indicated diagram, so which is obtained by the dynamometer. So this method is mostly used only in research laboratories as it is necessary to have an elaborate equipment to obtain accurate indicated diagrams at high speed. So this will give the 100% perfect result. Then fifth is fifth test is retardation test. So retardation test. So this test involves the method of retarding the engine by cutting the fuel supply. So the engine is made to run at no load at rated speed, taking into all usual precautions. When the engine is running under steady state operating condition, the supply of fuel is cut off and simultaneously the time of fall in the speeds by say 20%, 40%, 60%, 80% of the rated speed is recorded, and the tests are repeated once again with 50% load. So this is repeated once again with 50% load. So on the engine the values tabulated in approximate table, so a graph connecting. So we will plot a graph on the x-axis. So we'll get such a graph. So this is for no load and this is for 50% load. So here on the y-axis it is speed and on the x-axis it is time. So here we can measure that how much time is required to fall for some speed. Uh, so suppose this is 100 rpm. So suppose this speed is suppose around 400 rpm, and suppose here it is suppose 300 rpm. So suppose this fall is of 100 rpm. Suppose this fall is of 100 rpm speed. So here now we will measure the time difference taken for this fall. So for 50% load how much time is taken, and for 100% means no load how much time is taken. So this time we will just plot this as T2 and T3. So no load and load 50% load conditions are also this T2 and T3. So these are the time at no load and 50% load. So the frictional torque and hence frictional power will be calculated with the formula, that is torque T is equal to I alpha. So I is moment of inertia and alpha is angular acceleration. So as we know that what is angular acceleration, so it is angular velocity, derivation of angular velocity that we can say is that d omega by dt. But we know that what is I is moment of inertia, we can write it as mk square d omega by dt. So k is radius of gyration, m is mass. So now if I make d omega as a subject, so d omega is subject, so we'll get t mk sorry t divided by mk square into dt. Now if I integrate on both the side with respect to time and angular velocity t1 t2 and omega 1 and omega 2, so I will get, so t1 to t2 omega 1 to omega 2, so I will get as omega 2 minus omega omega 2 minus omega 1 is equal to t divided by mk square into t2 minus t1. Now we have got this formula. So when there is no load, then the torque which is acting, that is friction torque. So friction torque will be at no load condition. So that I will denote it at by F, friction torque. And when load is there is 50% load, so we'll denote it by TL, that is load torque. So at no load, the torque is only friction torque, and at load, what will be the torque? So the total torque will be the friction torque plus the load torque. So there is not. This is I'm saying there is a difference between both torque. So we will just see. Uh, so we'll just denote it by TL. So we'll see now applying in this condition. So hence at no load. So first when there is no load, so omega 2 minus omega 1 will be equal to Tf, that is friction torque, divided by m k square into T2 minus 0. So initial time will be, we are taking at 0, that is initial time. So T1 is equal to 0. So T2 is the time taken at no load condition. Okay, so as we know that this is no load condition and this is 50% load condition. So here we have taken T2. Now at so here this at no load, we will bring this mk square on the left, so we'll get m sorry so this is small m. So m k square into omega 2 minus omega 1 is equal to Tf into T2. So this we got it from the no load condition. Now at the load condition, what will be the equation? So omega 2 minus omega 1 is equal to, sorry, is equal to Tf plus TL. So what will be torque? That is friction torque plus load torque divided by mk square into T3 minus 0. So initial time we are taking at 0. So if I bring mk square on the left, so we'll get mk square into omega 2 minus omega 1 is equal to Tf plus T1 into T3. So this mk square into omega 2 minus omega 1, this is Tf into T2. So we will use this, that is Tf into T2 is equal to Tf plus T1 into T3. So this equation we will use. So now what we will do, we'll bring torque on the one side and time on the other sides. So T2 by T3 is equal to Tf plus T1 divided by Tf. So this will got, so which will be equal to T2 by T3 is equal to Tf. So sorry, so this will be Tf upon Tf plus T1 upon Tf. So Tf cancel. So we'll get 1 plus T1 upon Tf. This is equal to T2 by T3. So what is our goal? Our goal is to find a friction torque. So we have to make this as a subject. So I will bring this one on the left hand side. So we'll get T2 minus T3 divided by T3 is equal to T1 upon Tf. So Tf I will make subject. So I'll get Tf is equal to T1 T3 divided by T2 minus T3. So this is the equation for the friction torque. So T1 is the load torque which can be measured from the loading, that is T2 and T3 are observed values. From this Tf can be calculated. So time we can measure, and torque also, that is load torque, we can measure from the loading time. So if I compare all the methods, so what result I will get is that the William Lines method and Mohs tests are comparatively easy to conduct, and however this both tests give only an overall idea of the losses, whereas the motoring test gives a very good insight into various causes of losses and is much more powerful tool. So, as far as accuracy is concerned, the indicated power and brake power method is the most accurate if carefully done, and motoring methods usually gives a higher value of friction power as compared to that of the Williams line method. So retardation method, though simple, require accurate determination of the load torque and at the time for the fall in the speed for the same range. So this was the all the methods to measure the friction power. Now we will see few methods to measure the fuel measurement. So how we can measure the fuel? So the fuel consumption of an engine may be expressed either in the volume or mass. You can volume or mass, anything of the fuel supplied at the specific time. So there are two basic types of measurement used, that is volumetric type flow meters, and the second is gravimetric type flow meters. So this both flow meter, so here I have drawn the volumetric fuel tank meter. So what is type fuel meter? So here we will understand. So this is a simple arrangement for measurement of the fuel supply in laboratory. So it consists of spherical shells. As you can see, there is 100 cc and 200 cc capacity. So these are connected. So these are connected to two three-way cocks. So this is a three-way cock and this is also a three-way cock on both the sides, so that one spherical shell feeds the engine while the other is filled from the fuel tank. So this is filled from the fuel tank, and other uh, is feeds the engine. So this feeds the engine, and there is filled from the fuel tank. So the mass flow rate of the fuel supply. So the mass flow rate of the fuel supply, that will be the volume upon time into density of the fuel. So where the density of the fuel is the specific gravity of the fuel into density of water. So by this method the fuel is being measured. So this, the disadvantage of this method is that it does not give exact mass flow rate due to the variation in the density with temperature. The density changes with temperature, so we will not get the exact, time, means exact flow rate. Then the second method is gravimetric fuel flow meter. So in this method, so there is a fuel tank, then there is a valve, then there is manifolds, so which goes to one goes to the engine, and other, then there is again a valve. So this A, this B, it goes to the flask. So here I will draw a flask. So here is a flask. So this is a pan of weighing balance. So this is a pan of weighing balance. So this shows a direct measurement of the mass of the fuel supplied when the measurement of the fuel supply is not required. So when it is not required, the valve B is closed. So valve B is closed and the valve A is kept open so that the fuel from the tank is directly supplied to the engine. So when the measurement of the fuel is flow is required, so when measurement is required, so both the valves A and B are kept open. So A and B are kept open and the quantity of fuel in the flask is weighted on the balance. So this is weighted. So after this valve A is closed and valve B is kept open so that the fuel from the flask flows into the engine and time is measured. So it goes from here and then it goes to the engine. So the quantity of fuel in the flask is again weighed. So in this way the mass flow rate of the fuel supplied to the engine can be determined. So this is the direct weighing of the fuel method. So I hope you got this method of the fuel measurement. So we will see another flow methods also in the next lecture. Air consumption method. Thank you very much.